While most early learning settings have at least one child with a disability, teachers often have little or no training in educating and caring for children with special needs. What is inclusion? Where do we go for help and support? What if we don't have a background in special education? What if we get it wrong?
An inclusive program is one that meets the needs of all of the children. But to me, inclusive doesn't necessarily mean everybody's getting the same exact thing. So we try really hard to have all of our students participating in what's going on. We want them to be part of every single routine that's occurring in our classroom, but how one student is participating in circle may look different than how another student is participating in circle. And to me, that's inclusive. They're all part of circle in their own way.
For that sense, most people would probably think that inclusion is just making sure that everyone is included in some way. And I think that the challenge is trying to figure out how to include them. And so as the regular educator, that's where the hard part and the challenge lies, is trying to meet the needs of every kid and include every kid, but trying to figure that out. And that's can be a difficult situation.
Inclusion is a part of all aspects of education and society, and yet many feel unaware. Start the inclusion conversation. Explore the meaning and key components of inclusion and inclusion best practices.
So beginning the path to inclusion for smaller providers, family providers, church, faith-based, I think sometimes they have to first reflect on, is it something that they can do and be successful at, or is it going to cause them a problem? And I say that very delicately, but oftentimes there are children with differing needs who could pose a safety risk to themselves, which could then impact the program. So I think before they embark on that, they need to make sure that they've got a few of their ducks in a row for their sake as a program and for that child's sake. And so I'm thinking, for instance, if say they had a child with Down syndrome who was known to elope, and that is common. We've had plenty of children through here before with Down syndrome who, it's funny. It's not that they're trying to escape from it for any reason. It's really kind of funny to just try to run out the door. Is that provider, maybe it's a home provider and they're by themselves, are they going to be able to take care of the other two children they have in that child? So first and foremost, deciding if it is something they can embark on. If they can, and if they have the resources, which we've heard oftentimes from faith-based that it's hard because they probably need to hire another aide, and if there's not available funds for that, that might be a barrier as well. So those things need to be at the ground level. And then it would be talking to the family, finding out what this child currently has in place, what they need, and calling on someone who has that expertise. The best thing that I did for myself and for my students was to say, I don't know. I just had to say I don't know sometimes and find out from others what I needed to know and to ask for their support and ask for it again. I think that's the thing too, is sometimes it's easy to have somebody come in once and say, okay, do all of these things, and it can be overwhelming. So you might walk away feeling overwhelmed, you might walk away feeling empowered, and then you might go to implement it and not feel as empowered. And so you need to do it more than once, and trainings. I mean, there's really just get some of those skills so they have a place to start. And then I think from there, once they're comfortable, they can build.
Participation is central to inclusion, meaning there's a range of instructional approaches promoting engagement in play and learning. And there is a sense of belonging for every child, with or without disabilities.
For us, inclusion means participation. It doesn't mean that you're just on the roster and that you're just here. If we have a child here that's on the autism spectrum, for instance, and would rather only play with the bouncy balls at the sensory table, if that's what's in it, it's great that he's here, but that's not his only objective, is to just stay focused on that and to not participate. We're going to have to push his buttons. We're going to have to encourage him and work with him to figure out how we can help him participate fully in the classroom. We want to definitely work with all of our children from where they're at too. We don't want to ever view them from a deficit perspective. We want to view them from an ability perspective. So wherever they are, we need to figure out what's next. And I think that's the difference between inclusion and another quote-unquote typical program, is that we're focused on where they're at, where we can help them get to, how we're going to get them there, and how, most importantly, they get to participate with their peers.
All children are unique in their development. Some children have distinctive developmental abilities and disabilities that require a closer look at the practices, tools, and mindsets incorporated within programs.
So as a professional coming in, and maybe a potential hire, if I could look at it that way, that we might be considering for a role in our program, and if they didn't have any familiarity with inclusion, but say they had an early ed background and so they knew early education, something I think that it's easy to liken it to that people understand is, while it is very different, it is a little bit like having a mixed age group because they're at different levels. When you have 2s, 3s, and 4s together, they're at different levels. So the same behavior system doesn't work with all of them. The same activity is going to need a modification in order for them all to participate. We can't expect the same from 2-year-olds as we do 4-year-olds. Any of our children with disabilities, it's the same way. Just because they may have lower mobility or they may get overstimulated by the environment doesn't mean that they can't participate. It means that it's now our job to figure out how to help them participate and be successful.
Inclusion involves putting into place a quality framework of supports, such as program philosophies and policies, professional development, specialized services and therapies, and opportunities for communication and collaboration among families and professionals.
Access is a complicated question. I've actually talked to a group of directors before about the process because what I've heard in the community oftentimes is that the providers aren't sure how to access or who can initiate the access, because in some instances it has to be the parent that says, I'll make the call to get this support for my child, and in some instances the provider can do that. And so what's unfortunate is that if a provider isn't able to work with a parent, or for whatever reason, the parent is non-cooperative or doesn't have the time or whatever the situation may be, and the parent doesn't get that access to wraparound mental health services or additional therapies so this child can be successful and be successfully included in a typical program, they're oftentimes asked to leave. And it's not fair to blame the provider, because if they can't get the supports they need, if they don't have that access, then they can't help this child. At the same time, we need to advocate for these children, and we need to help the parents be advocates for the children, those that aren't already, so that they know how to access services, how to access equipment, and how to get the support that they need. And sometimes that may mean physical pieces of equipment. Other times that may mean we need therapy, we need a counselor. Who can you direct us to? And we can't forget about that parent piece. I think, whether we're talking inclusion or typical setting altogether, obviously that parent piece is huge, because the child can do really, really well in our setting or in another setting, or maybe they transition to kindergarten, but if they don't have that parent piece, it's really gonna, or that family piece, not just parent, because the family dynamics are changing all the time. There's really not anybody that's going to be successful. So not fully, not to the extent that they could be.
Educators can create environments that bring out the strengths of every child. There are multiple ways to promote learning and development, and different approaches so everyone can participate.
We use a lot of assistive technology in our classroom, and that can mean a lot of different things. So for some children, it's the icons. Just because it has the word technology in it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be computerized or electronic. So the icons that we use for our children to participate in the How Are You routine, or to answer a question related to our Book It Circle, those icons that are assistive technology, that Big Mac button that we're using, the iPad. You didn't see it today, but some of our children have more complex communication devices that they're using to communicate. The walkers and orthotic shoes, those are all assistive technologies for our students. So we have a ton. We rely on the therapists, the occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists, to help guide us in finding the best pieces of assistive technology for our students. And then once we've chosen what they need, then Katie and I and all of the aides get trained in how to use those with our children so that we can carry over day in and day out with that. And it takes some planning up front. I think circle time to have everybody's icons and buttons and what everybody needed took some planning for us in the first couple of weeks of school as we figured out where everybody was. But now it's just a matter of grabbing those things every day. So it's a really easy way to make sure that everybody is doing what they need to do to be part of that day in and day out. And now it doesn't take any more work. The same thing with our teacher table. We plan it, we come up with how everybody's might be a little bit different, but then we just sit down and do it. So I think for educators who think inclusion takes a lot of work, it might take a little extra work up front, but then once you've got those supports in place, it's very easy to make that happen.
And what if you don't have a background in special education?
So I have my background is in early childhood and elementary, and so I don't have that special needs background, but it has been just such a joy working here and just interacting with the kids and seeing each child grow, because of course each child is continually growing and interacting in their own way, and so it's just great to be able to be a part of that. And yes, it's a challenge. It's hard because I do not have that special needs background, but that's where it is great that I have an amazing co-teacher that is willing to help me and to support me and continue to teach me. I've also taken a lot of training so that I was able to do that and learn different things from the trainings. And I know that people don't have a co-teacher that are able to interact and have that background as well, but then they can rely on therapists or other people, their director or whoever, to help them and support them.
As early educators, as teachers in general, I think we value the children and we want to get to know them, but I think you have to dig a little deeper sometimes with children who learn differently, who process differently, who have different abilities, because what we may think is them just being stubborn may actually be that they can't retrieve that information or they aren't able to take that next step unless you've helped them either learn it or given them a modification to be successful. It's a big challenge on staff. It's a really big challenge on staff. But I think when they are passionate about it and they see how much it benefits the children and the families, they're really motivated to keep doing it. And it means a lot of change. A lot of quick thinking on your feet sometimes in order for participation to be successful.
I think it's really important for any child, but particularly a child with special needs, to not be kept in a bubble. They're a child. They should be out playing soccer and getting dirty in the mud and doing all of those things. And so our philosophy in our classroom is, it doesn't matter. You're still going to do those things. We're still all going to go on field trips together. We're still all going to get down on the floor and wiggle like cat. We're all going to do it. We just might need to put different things in place so that you can play soccer or get down in the mud or whatever it is. But I just think that we try to hold our students to the same, all of our students to the same expectations. You're going to be a kid, you're going to play, you're going to be part of the day. And I think that's really important for our children. Some of our children who start here at Easter Seals, their parents are a little hesitant. They're not sure about sending them to school. They're not sure about letting them go play on the playground and roll in the mud and do those things. And we try to help those parents feel comfortable in knowing that they're a kid and they need to do these things, and we'll keep them safe and we'll find ways for them to do that. But they're a kid. They should be part of all those experiences.
I think, that's hopefully where we're coming from now, and that more people are starting to realize that this is a child just like any other child. They just have some extra issues that they have to work through. And so as more people continue to see that and we educate people with that, then we will be able to better help these children and to be able to be in a collaborative classroom where the kids that are typically developing are interacting with them, and we are seeing it through their eyes, because they don't see them with a disability. They see them as their friend. And so when you see it through a child's eyes, you get a better perspective, because they're still naive to the world and they have that great personality, and so then they see that, and so then that helps adults to see it as well.
Visit Better Kid Care. www.betterkidcare.psu.edu. We care because you care.